Ready with me while I tell you about the story of the time my high school teacher tried to show me his dick. So this happened my sophomore year. I had actually transferred to this school because I got essayed at my last school. And of course CPS stated nothing about it. I'm gonna make this as short as possible, but there might be a part 2. This teacher was my sex ed teacher, my driving instructor, and my gym teacher. I had really liked this teacher because he was always so nice to me. And he was in like his late 30s. I never got any weird vibes from him, but I should have. There were so many red flags, but of course I was young, I didn't know any better. And he had a daughter, so of course I thought like, oh, that's just how he is. I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. I think the first red flag would be him commenting on the stretch marks on my legs and saying that he was gonna report me for self-harm scars. I guess they look similar to that, but they clearly were not that. But yeah, I basically had to show him like that they weren't that, if you know what I mean. Just completely inappropriate, like 100% inappropriate. But I was young, I didn't know. I was just worried about my parents getting reported for something that was not true. I think the second red flag would be him commenting on how thick I was and how doing the deed would make you thicker. But of course I was oblivious to all this. I was just like, oh, okay. Good to know, I guess. Gonna get right into it. Basically, one day when we were in driver's ed, this was during Ramadan too. We had just gotten out the car, like we were coming back from the road test. Now, at my school, there was a little trailer, and in this trailer, there were 2 rooms. One where all the paperwork was going on, like all the office stuff, and then one big room where it was like, just a big room. Now, him and I were in this big room alone. Everyone else was in the little room behind the closed door. As I was waiting for my test results, I was basically on my phone, and I looked up to see him stretching, but as he was stretching, his joggers were down, no drawers. As soon as I see that, I was just like in shock. I didn't know what to like, do I tell him? Or like, does he know? Like my mind was just racing, so I just looked down right away. Then I'm just like, okay, like I'll just pretend I didn't see that. I didn't want to embarrass him because I was giving him the benefit of the doubt, so I like assumed it was an accident. So right after I had seen that, of course I looked down right away. So when I looked back up, because he had called my name, he had asked me to go up to him to discuss a few things about like my test. And of course I was scared, but I went up to him and he just gave me like these weird looks, like he never looked at me like that before. Like I literally, like I was scared, and I was just like, maybe it's all in my head. I tried so hard to like tell myself that this was not real, because like I said, I never thought of him in that way, and I just assumed that he was just like this really like nice teacher. Anyway, he did it a few more times, believe it or not. People would walk in occasionally within the like 3 minutes that it happened in, and as soon as they came in, he would put his arm down, like his shirt would cover. Like I kid you not, as soon as somebody opened the door, he'd be like, and stupid me was still giving him the benefit of the doubt. Then it was finally time for me to sign something, and that's how I found out that he was doing it on purpose. Because when he asked me to sign the paper, he did this. Let's just say my prayer skirt is his sweatpants, and his shirt is like all the way up, and my book is the clipboard. And y'all, I still pretended I didn't see. I grabbed the clipboard and I was like, I gave it back to him basically without looking. I just looked straight into his like face or his eyes. And when he took the clipboard, he was like this. Like, I can't even make this up. Like, this is, like, it was so ugly. And honestly, the whole situation was just gross. Because when I had reported it to 2 teachers, one of them was, like, making excuses for him. Saying, oh, he has a daughter, he would never do that. Maybe it was laundry day, he forgot to wear underwear. And then the other teacher, who's a woman, was like, oh, yeah, that's, like, my work husband. I should have known right then and there that she was not going to believe what I was going to say. And her thing was, when I was in high school, I used to wear these, like, bralette t-shirt type thing was going around. Basically like this. And she was like, well, showing boxers is the same thing as showing your bra, you know that, because it's still undergarments. Basically insinuating that I should not be complaining because I do the same thing. The problem is he wasn't wearing underwear. And she's like, well, when you wear stuff like that, you give men the wrong idea. Bro, I'm a sophomore in high school. Anyways, long story short, we ended up reporting it to the police and finding out he had added a few girls on Snapchat that were in my grade and posting videos of him. He got fired because he's a freaking creep, and I was told not to post anything about it or speak about it. But because I couldn't speak about it, people started making their own little rumor, like a whole walkout because he had gotten removed from the school, and they were like protesting to bring him back. And I remember these 2 girls pulled me aside in the hallway and like asked to speak to me. And of course I was like, yeah, what's going on? And they were just like harassing me with like these stupid questions, basically blaming me, saying that if he goes to jail, it'll be my fault, and that he has a daughter and I'm letting his daughter grow up without a father. They were just horrible. These girls, they would just post these things. I'm a feminist. Like, it's always the girls that post stuff like this. Like, oh, like Me Too movement, stuff like that. You know, like girl positive posts. I don't know, it was pretty ironic to me, but like I said, that was in high school. I hope they grew and learned from their mistakes. He's no longer able to work at a school. Annoyed that he didn't get jail time because they couldn't prove that those were his intentions. It was like some dumb excuse like, oh, like we don't know if he really meant to show you that or if he really meant to post that. Like, I don't know. At this point, like, I'm 20 years old. Not my problem to deal with anymore. I was just surprised on how this all played out. And it just goes to show, like, this is why women don't like to speak up about stuff like this. Because there's always going to be people defending the person that's doing stuff like this.
Every makeup artist's worst nightmare is if they are unwell on a wedding day. Actually, it's probably every supplier's worst nightmare. Well, let me tell you about the time I was, in fact, unwell on a wedding day. So let's set the scene. It was last December. Yes, it was recently. This wedding had quite an early start and I can't fully remember what time I had to be there, but I just remember it was early. But the place I had to travel to was only a 15-minute drive, which was lovely. And you may be thinking, I already know where the story's going. Well, let me tell you, you don't, because nothing about this wedding morning could have been predicted. Also, guys, my eye eczema is playing up a little bit, so if I look extra wrinkly under or around the eye area, that is why. I actually started off that day feeling absolutely fine, perfectly fine, didn't feel unwell at all, felt absolutely normal. In fact, I was actually really looking forward to this wedding because the bride was super lovely and I was working alongside a hairstylist who I really like. I arrive at the hotel early and I start to take my kit inside to go get set up. I'd already texted the bride to let her know I was there and she said she would be there in approximately 10 minutes. So let me remind you, it's December, so it's cold outside. However, I walk into the getting ready room to what felt like a hot summer's day in the Caribbean. It was boiling in there. Obviously somebody had whacked the heating on and left it there. Of course, I go and turn that right down. I was first in the room and before I set up, I always like to scout about to see the best places for hair and makeup. I feel like I'm very thoughtful in the fact I always make sure hairstylists have a space suited to them. So like a dressing table with plug sockets and a mirror. Whereas makeup can really go anywhere. So I set up my kit on the bed on a towel, don't worry, and waited for my bride to arrive. Let's also talk about my outfit because that was a key component to this story as well. I was wearing a thick black hoodie, ugly creased t-shirt that I just did not want to see the light of day. And the only reason I wore it was because it was cold outside and I wanted an extra layer under my hoodie. Anyway, my bride and her bridesmaid arrive. All is good, I'm feeling good, and I'm ready to start makeup on time. It's not until the rest of the bridal party arrive, and there's about 8 people in this room, when I start to feel a little bit too hot. I then start to feel very sick. And I don't know about anybody else, but sometimes I can feel sick and know I'm gonna be all right. Other times I can feel sick and I just know it's gonna happen. And this was most definitely one of those times where I just knew it was coming. But by this point, I was already halfway through makeup on bridesmaid number 1. Okay, so I'm starting makeup on bridesmaid number 2. Bridesmaid number 1 is all done. I had tried to suppress the feeling of being sick enough to get through bridesmaid number 1, and I thought, you know what, we're gonna get through it, it's gonna be fine. There are a lot of people in this room now, and because more bodies create more heat, and of course I'm in this stupid hoodie that I am refusing to take off because I have the ugliest t-shirt ever underneath, I'm getting hotter and hotter and hotter by the minute. Because I'm getting hot, I'm getting stressed because I'm getting hot. And when I'm stressed, I get even hotter. So I am drinking water like there's no tomorrow. So I finish bridesmaid number 2 and I move on to bridesmaid number 3. And at this point, I'd also like to mention that the bridal party are lovely. The whole bridal party is super lovely, which I was so thankful for because I was just feeling so rough at this point. I couldn't have dealt with difficult, fussy bridesmaids. Might have sent me over the edge. I won't lie, I was pretty much silent the whole way through bridesmaid number 3's makeup. I just kept thinking anytime I have to open my mouth, am I going to be sick? It was that bad. When it came to bridesmaid number 4, I was having to have a few breaks in between to keep running backwards and forwards to the toilet. There was a lot going on in the room though, so I felt like I kind of hid it well. Everyone was so distracted, nobody really noticed how many times I did go to the loo. But I just kept feeling like I was going to be sick any moment. However, every time I went to the toilet, I wasn't sick, which was the most annoying thing. I just kept thinking, if I'm sick, I'll feel better. I know it's disgusting, but you know when you just feel like you need to get it out of your system and then you'll be fine? Wasn't happening for me. The hairstylist kept giving me like side-eye looks as if she was asking me, are you okay? And my eyes were like glaring back at her and almost yelling, no, I'm not okay. She definitely knew I wasn't myself, especially because we'd worked together so many times before. We knew each other really well. She kind of knew something wasn't 100% right. So if there wasn't enough people in this room that I once thought was quite a big room, which now felt very small, then 2 photographers arrived. And I was like, oh my god, could we get any more people in this small little room that felt like a sauna? Well, yeah, we did. So the 2 photographers came in and obviously had to do their thing, move people about, go about everybody and take pictures. But that's not all, because alongside the photographers arriving, more friends and family members came in the room. People were coming and going, but it just felt like there was a never-ending stream of people. As I said, more bodies added more heat to the room. I didn't want to run to the toilet anymore because I kept thinking everybody must think I've got some sort of issue. And let's be real, if there is somebody that's darting backwards and forwards to the toilet all the time, the first thing you're going to think is that they've got the shits, which I didn't have. I just felt so sick. Make my way through the bride. I did her makeup. I was very pleased with how the makeup turned out as well. How I managed it, I have absolutely no idea, but we managed it. But anyway, I finished with the bride and move on to my last bridesmaid who, bless her, definitely did not receive my best work. But it was the best I could do at this point. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't awful, but it wasn't my absolute favourite. She was so lovely. I think she could probably tell there was something wrong with me. Part of me did feel like at this point, is my body just teasing me, because I was nearly done with the last bridesmaid and I thought the end is in sight. I can dash to a toilet that's not near this wedding party because, can you imagine? I just really did not want them to know that like I was going to be sick any moment, because I think that would be the worst thing in the world, to know the whole time in the morning your makeup artist was on the verge of throwing up. So I finished all the makeup and luckily the bride has requested a second room across the hall to get changed in and have like other pictures, you know, pictures where there's not a load of mess around her. Now I'm thinking, oh my god, result, I could go in that room to do top-ups for her, and then when she leaves, I will be the only one in that bathroom. That didn't happen. They didn't end up leaving until later than I expected, so I'm holding it in at this point. Never really like to leave a wedding until I know the bride and the bridal party have left, just in case of any makeup emergencies or if they need me for anything. So I was not about to be darting out of there, regardless of how ill I felt. I just, yeah, wasn't going to be doing it. Not that I was waiting for them to leave, but I'm not kidding. As soon as they did, I ran to that bathroom. And you guessed it, I was definitely sick, probably about 3 times. I still didn't feel better after it. So I genuinely think the reasons why it all happened was, for one, the stupid hoodie situation. The fact that I couldn't take a layer off to kind of like cool myself down definitely made a huge difference, because had I been able to just work in a t-shirt, probably would have felt a little bit better. We only had 2 Weetabix, now we have 3. Just drinking so much water, just drinking it on an empty stomach. There was nothing to kind of come out when it came out. It was just all water. Sorry if that's TMI. So nowadays I always dress appropriately, regardless of whether it's freezing cold outside. I like to wear layers, and nice layers, in case I am boiling hot. I always bring my iced coffee with me for a wedding to make sure that kind of ties me over until I get home to eat, because coffee does take the edge off my appetite, and I find that has worked ever since that wedding. And I eat 3 Weetabix on a wedding morning. Oh, well that was intense. Oh my god, look at all those splats on my face. That's not me saying that's the key ingredients to get through a wedding morning, but that's definitely what works for me nowadays, and I've not had a situation like that ever since. All I can say is that I was just so grateful to how lovely the bridal party were, and hope that I never have a situation like that ever again. But who knows, working weddings can be stressful and things like that can happen. I just feel like as a makeup artist, you just got to get through it. You've got to make it through. This is someone's most important day of their life, and I'm there to make them look and feel beautiful. So I just gotta suck it up.
Someone was secretly living in the walls of my apartment, and you're gonna get ready with me while I relive that trauma. I don't even know why I'm doing this right now. A few years ago, me and 3 other friends decided to move into an apartment together. And we were so excited and young and carefree, and we thought that this was gonna be like the time of our lives. At first, everything was completely fine. Getting along, we're going out, we're doing all the girly things, but just you wait. About a week and a half in, we all start individually noticing some of our things going missing. Small stuff though, that you wouldn't like outright notice. On top of that, I kid you not, we started hearing like scratching in our vents and knocks on the walls and random banging happening through the middle of the night. And we are fucking petrified. So we started doing some research on the internet to see if anyone else in the world had experienced something similar to what we were going through at our own place. And lo and behold, one of the first things that we came across was somebody experiencing the exact same thing, and you guessed it, someone was living in their walls. Yep, you heard that right, living in their walls. Sneaking out in the middle of the night while they were sleeping, taking all their stuff, and going back into the wall before they woke up. All 4 of us were sitting in the living room when we found that article and simultaneously turned to look at each other and then proceed to look at the 2 locked doors in our place that we hadn't been able to open since we arrived. And saying that we're freaked out by this point is such an understatement, but we end up calling maintenance to come unlock the doors and tell them what's been going on at our place. Maintenance comes like rushing up. Within 3 minutes, they're knocking at our door. He comes in and unlocks both the doors. Honestly, to our surprise at this point, there's nothing there. So the maintenance guys turned around and looked at us like we were insane and proceeded to basically gaslight us into thinking we were just a bunch of paranoid young girls. And you know what? His gaslighting worked, because after that day, we dropped it. Until something happened a week later that we literally just couldn't ignore. So one night, it was really late, and all 4 of us were home and decided to order pizza for a little late night snacky. The pizza delivery guy was taking a hot second. We actually all ended up falling asleep before he got there. So we all wake up and see that the pizza box that we ordered is sitting on our counter. And it's kind of like half open, and there's some sauce and like pizza remnants. So we start laughing and we're like, oh my God, who woke up and got the pizza? Like, thank you so much. And we go around the room and everyone's like, oh, I wasn't awake. Well, I wasn't awake either. And they both weren't awake. No one was awake. And because we all went to sleep with one another, we each had an alibi of, hey, they were sleeping next to me. But it didn't matter, because after that night, we all started to turn on each other. We bought a camera for the apartment. We started going through each other's things. But a few weeks in, we'd honestly had enough of this, and we were like, we're gonna figure this out tonight. We all decided to leave the apartment at the same time, go to the grocery store, and we took note of everything that was in our fridge and our pantry so we could see if anything was moved or taken when we got back. Quick spray break. And of course, we get back from the store and things are missing. We covered all our bases. We asked to see the security footage. We asked about our neighbors, but in the end, we came up with nothing. So you guys kept asking if the camera captured anything, but those were actually installed after both of those incidents happened. Doing that was kind of our final straw, last ditch effort. We only put up one camera that all of the roommates knew about, and it was facing our living room and kitchen space. Once it was up, we checked that thing religiously. Conveniently, of course, right after we did that, things stopped going missing. We were already like a month or 2 into the school year, so classes were in full swing. But honestly, none of us really had the energy to talk about what had happened. So what did we do? We hunkered down for the rest of the year. Occasionally throughout the rest of the year, we would still hear those scratches and the random banging, but we kind of just let it go. Call us dumb, but we figured that if something or someone was planning on hurting us, they would have done it already. We did, however, give it some funny names like the Munchkin Man and the Ghost of Jose. At the end of our lease, we moved out, so no, I don't live there anymore, but me and all of my roommates are still friends to this day.
The story of the time that I was in a gun attack one of these. I'm gonna preface this video by saying that if you have been involved in one of these, I am so sorry and I hope that you're okay. This is just for storytelling purposes only, and if you do not like these kinds of stories, feel free to scroll. So flashback to when I was 19 years old and working in a retail store in the mall to pay for college. It was a Sunday, and Sundays at this mall were not very busy, and the store I was working at was also very small. On Sundays, the most employees we needed there at a time was like 2. I had come in from my shift around noon, and the girl who was already working there had only a couple hours left in her shift, so our shifts overlapped for like 2 hours, maybe even less. I had closing shifts, so once she left, I was going to be there for a couple of hours by myself to close down the store, which I had done several times, so it wasn't a big deal for me. Anyway, so we're working our shifts, and the fire alarm goes off. So we followed protocol, we got all of the customers inside safe, and we locked everything down. And then over the intercom, they announced that it was a false alarm and that we were okay. So we open everything back up and continue working. About 30 minutes later, another fire alarm goes off. So we get the customers in, lock down, do it all over again. Then it's announced that it was another false alarm and we're okay to go back to work. At this point, my coworker's shift is over and I have closing shift for a couple of more hours. Not too long after she leaves, another fire alarm goes off. At this point, everyone in the mall is so sick of it that the stores aren't even closing down anymore. And at this point, my store was completely empty, so I just decided that I was going to wait it out until they announced that it was another false alarm, which they never did. All of a sudden, I see everyone in the mall running. My store was right next to the exit, so that's how I knew that everyone was like evacuating. So in my mind, I think, oh, this actually must be a real fire this time. All of a sudden, I see a bunch of cops and what I think was the SWAT team running in. I have no clue what's going on and I'm standing in the doorway of my store like an idiot. A policeman comes up to me and tells me that there's a suspected shooter in the mall and that I need to close down the store and turn off the lights and hide. I'm so shocked by what just came out of this man's mouth that I'm like, okay, and I just did what he said. Again, there was no one in my store, so locking down was really easy. I locked the doors, turned off the lights, and I hid behind the checkout desk. The reason I chose to hide behind the checkout desk and not the inventory room in the back was because our store had glass windows and glass doors all in the front so I could see out completely, and I wanted to be able to see if I could evacuate or what was going on and everything like that. Okay, so like I said, I'm hiding behind the checkout desk, and the reason that I chose the checkout desk and not the inventory room in the back was because our store had glass windows and glass doors, and I wanted to be able to see out to know when I could evacuate. But I was hidden well enough that if you walked by, you wouldn't be able to see me behind the desk, and the lights were off, so that also helped. Looking back, it probably wasn't the best spot to hide because our store didn't have like one of those gate things that you can pull down. It was just the doors and like locks, and they were glass. Anyway, so I'm hiding in the dark. I have no idea what's going on, and my first instinct is to call my mom. So I call her and I explain what's going on. I tell her that I don't really know what's going on, but this is just the information that I have and I don't know what to do and I'm scared. She tells me to stay hidden, stay quiet, and to just call my manager and let my manager know what's happening. I called my manager, but she didn't answer, so I just left a voicemail. This part I can't really remember if I called the CEO of the company next and then they called me back, or if my manager passed on my voicemail to them and they just called me. I can't remember. It was years ago. But I got a call from like headquarters. They called, made sure that I was okay, and then they told me to go into the inventory room in the back so that I would be like fully hidden. I went into the inventory room and I just kind of sat there for a while waiting. In the back of the inventory room, there was a door that led to the back hallways of the mall, and that is where you like got your inventory from, where all of the delivery men went to drop off your stuff. And all of a sudden I hear tons of footsteps running in those back hallways, and you know, in that situation, the first thing that you think is someone's back there and they're gonna get into my store and hurt me. Looking back, it was probably just policemen running back there or employees being evacuated through the back halls. I don't really know. Anyway, so I just stayed hidden for a while. I just kind of sat there. Nothing really happened for almost an hour, I would say. Eventually, I hear some knocking coming from that front glass door that I locked, and so I very carefully peeked out from the inventory room and I saw that there was a cop there. He told me that it was time to evacuate, that everything was okay, and that I was safe to come out. I grabbed my things and I locked the doors behind me and I left. This entire thing happened all the way down the hall on the other side of the mall, which is why I never heard any gunshots or anything like that. 2 people ended up with GSWs, but they were taken to the hospital and they were okay. And I never followed up with it, so I don't know if whoever did it was ever caught. Overall, I was very safe, and this whole thing could have been so much worse, but thankfully it wasn't. But nerve-wracking nonetheless. Needless to say, I quit my job.
Ready with me while I tell you guys why I broke up with my son's dad 5 weeks after I had my son. So me and my son's dad were in a situationship, and then we eventually got into a relationship. A month after we got into a relationship, I found out that I was pregnant. He had just graduated college and moved back home, so we were in a long-distance relationship. We weren't spending that much time together while I was pregnant. I was going to all my doctor's appointments by myself, and he was just coming to visit on the weekends, maybe every weekend, if not every other weekend. As we had so much space, I didn't realize at the time that, we weren't really compatible. I had my son, I actually went to go stay with him and his mom because I just felt like he wasn't working at the time and I actually did need help with my son, so it was just more convenient for me to go stay with them. My son's birthday is in January, so I'm just trying to set the scene for you guys. January 16th, and 5 weeks after I had him was Valentine's Day. This day is the day that I decided that I no longer wanted to be with him and I had reached my breaking point. This day 6 years ago, I just so happened to be at his dad's house. I spent the night with his dad and his stepmom just so that they could have some time with the baby. And at that point, like I said, my baby was like 5 weeks old, so I just was not leaving him with anybody. He calls me and tells me to head over to his mom's house by a certain time. So I pack up my stuff and the baby and we start heading that way. Mind you, his mom's house is like 10 minutes from his dad's house, so it was like a quick drive. It wasn't that far. And when I get there, he was like, hey, I'm about to head back downstairs, but your stuff is on the table. So he didn't even put the stuff in my hand. He was like, your stuff is on the table. So I go look on the table. I see like one rose and I see a card. And then as he's heading downstairs, he's like, your breakfast is in the microwave. My breakfast is where? It is Valentine's Day. I just had your baby 5 weeks ago naturally, and my breakfast is in the microwave? Yeah. When I tell you, it was in that very moment that I said, I'm choosing me. I'm choosing me for this day forward because there is no way that the person that I am supposed to be with would make me breakfast and not serve it to me hot and ready. And that was my breaking point. Just no way that I could allow that for myself. No way. So that is why we are no longer together. There was no like scandalous story or situation, nothing like that. It was just that I deserve way more than what he could have offered me. I said, I'm taking me and I'm taking the baby and I'm leaving.
The scariest thing happened to me last night. The only reason I'm kind of laughing about this is because I'm still in a state of shock. Okay, so it all started when me and my friends wanted to get McDonald's. So we go to this McDonald's and the line, we would have been waiting for 45 minutes. So I was like, no, we gotta go. Bad idea. But we were really hungry and we wanted food. So we decided to go to a McDonald's super far away, like totally opposite direction. So we're driving like 20 minutes to this McDonald's super far away. And I see a freaking black cat in the corner. And I look at my friend and I go, oh, I don't even think you know this part of the story, Sophia.
I don't.
So we were driving to this McDonald's and a black cat is like in the corner. And I turn to my friend, I'm like, that's like terrible luck. And we're like, whatever, we brush it off. Then we pull up to this McDonald's and we see these two really sketchy looking guys in the corner standing by a post. But I didn't think anything of it. Like it's 3 a.m, mind you. So I was like, whatever. So we get our food. First of all, the freaking ice cream machine, of course, wasn't working. The one thing I wanted, I was already in a bad mood, and we just wanted to pull over to, like, take a bite of, my friend wanted to take a bite of her food. So we pull into this little spot, and I'm not kidding, when one of the guys got into his car right next to us and started zooming up into his window and staring at us like this. And my friend goes, oh my God, he's staring at us. You need to move. So we drove to the middle of this parking lot that had, like, 300 spaces that were completely empty. It's 3 a.m. No one is out. I'm in the middle of this parking lot because we just want to eat our food for like 1 second. We were far away from the pass spot. And 2 seconds later, this man drives up to the spot right next to us. Right next to us in the middle of this empty parking lot. So I looked at my friend and I go, that's literally him. And I sped out of there like so fast. I've never driven faster. Started speeding down the roads. Thank God our other friends were in a car nearby also getting McDonald's, so they were able to like kind of help us. So we were going up and down the roads making U-turns, and apparently the guy followed us and took 4 U-turns following us up and down the street, like literally following us, and I was speeding. And then my friend had my fries and he was like, oh, come to this parking lot to get the fries. And then the guy was pulling into that same parking lot, like magically following us. So then anyways, he keeps following us. I have 911 dialed. I was about to call the cops, and my friend was like, there's nothing they're going to be able to do. So the people in the other car got in front of the guy and started driving super slowly to piss him off. So he ended up like getting lost and losing us. And I had to go back home. So I thought the guy was going to follow me home, and I'm home alone. So it was the most terrifying thing ever. I'm out of time, but if you're ever in that situation, I'm so sorry. It was the scariest thing ever.